Don't you dare tell us to call off our plans again. We've had these Elton John tickets for months. My mother's voice burst through the hospital room speaker, cutting and unbending. I stiffened, holding my phone and shaking hands. The machines around me beeped rhythmically, but not my heart. It was Christmas Eve in the Las Vegas Medical Center. My 2-year-old twins, Ethan and Emily, sat on the ground, building blocks, oblivious, carefree. A nurse named Valerie fiddled. With the monitors, her face kind, almost guarded. My mother's icy glare dominated the screen. The agony of my stomach was like knives twisting deeper with each intake of breath. But nothing pained me as much as the bite of her disinterest. I am Natasha Wilson. I am 33 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I have been the afterthought in my own life. My little sister, Jessica, the golden child, was the star. I, meanwhile, could get up and leave the room and no one would even miss me. Now, even while I pleaded for assistance during an emergency, my parents treated me as nothing. Dad, Mom, please, I spoke in a barely audible whisper. I have no one else. The doctor said they need to go in tonight. I just need you to babysit the twins. My father's reply was heard next, icy and cutting like glass. You're becoming a nuisance, Natasha. A burden. We're retired now. We've earned the right to enjoy our lives without your constant problems. The words sliced deeper than the scalpels soon would. I had been their lifeline for 3 years, paying $2,500 a month for their mortgage and utilities. Even after James, my husband, was murdered in a car accident. Even as I was drowning in sorrow, I continued to give, because I thought family mattered. But there in that cold hospital room, I realized at last, to them, I was just an ATM. Tears filled my eyes. My hands trembled. That's when the nurse, Valerie, set a soothing hand on my shoulder. Natasha, she whispered, my friend Olivia is a professional nanny. She has experience working with children who've experienced trauma. Let me call her for you. You don't have to trust them anymore. Her compassion almost shattered me. It was such a contrast to my parents' cruelty. The twins laughed in the corner, their pure laughter piercing me with love and fear. They had already lost one father. If I didn't make it through surgery tonight, who would keep them safe? My parents, these self-centered strangers who shared my DNA. Never. I nodded through the sobs. Yes, please call her. And so, with a single whispered affirmation, I started cutting loose from the folks that had raised me but never really loved me. Memories overwhelmed me like waves when the call hung up. The day I graduated from college with honors, but my parents hardly glanced up because Jessica had landed a 2-minute commercial. My wedding day, when they grumbled the location was too far. The twins' birth when they came just once before writing them off as too fussy. And James. Dear James, he'd been my rock throughout every tempest, the sole one who'd known. He'd known the sting of rejection from family. He'd carried it himself from a father who'd walked out years before. Now, in his absence, I was at a fork, shattered, betrayed, but no longer ignorant. Christmas Eve, in a cold, sterile hospital room, I vowed I would never plead for their love again. From now on, I would construct my life, my strength, and my revenge not for myself, but for Ethan and Emily. For sometimes the best revenge is not fury or devastation. It's freedom. We'll create our own family, James would whisper while embracing Emmy, one that understands what real love is. And he was correct. We built a home together with lots of laughter, warmth, and welcome. A place where Ethan and Emily were never invisible, never unwanted. But half a year ago, a drunkard driver tore him from us, leaving me with 2 toddlers, a shattered heart, and sleepless nights filled with sorrow. Even so, I continued to send money to my parents. Indeed, I boosted the payments when they complained about inflation. I convinced myself that I was proving something, that I was superior to them, that family sticks together, whatever happens. But lying there in that Christmas Eve hospital bed, bleeding inside, with surgery that could very well kill me looming on the horizon, the hard irony struck home. They couldn't even miss a concert to see their own grandchildren. Valerie came back, her presence a tranquil counterpoint to my whirlwind. "Olivia's on her way," she replied. "She's fantastic with kids." She worked in trauma cases at the children's hospital before going into private care. "How much is this going to cost?" I asked tightly. Medical expenses already burdened me like weights. James's insurance hadn't covered half of what it should. "Don't think of that now," Valerie instructed firmly. "The only thing that concerns us now is getting you through surgery, Doc, but I had been thinking about it. About the $2,500 that I was to wire to my parents next week. Money that had routinely gone to them without fail, money that might just save me and my kids now." That thought sparked something within me that I hadn't experienced in years. A spark. A flame of survival. When Olivia arrived, she was just as described. Kind, competent, immediately bonding with Ethan and Emily. I sat there and watched her drop to their level, speak softly, smile comfortingly, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a tiny wave of relief, Dot, as I was being prepped for surgery. I asked Valerie to get me my phone. My hands trembled, but my head was clear. Dot, 2 messages. That's all it took. The first to my bank. Terminate all future payments to my parents. The second to my parents, I will no longer be supporting you financially. My kids and I are worth better than being an afterthought to you. Don't bother contacting me again, Dot, as they rolled me towards the operating room. Something new flooded through me, something more powerful than fear. Dot, freedom. Dot, the operation was a success, but it made me weak, in and out of consciousness for 5 agonizing days. Throughout it all, Olivia remained with me, looking after the twins by day, taking them to my flat at night, ensuring that they never felt abandoned. When I was sufficiently alert to take a look at my phone, the screen was ablaze with mayhem. 27 missed calls. Scores of texts. The texts were on cue. Initially, confusion, then frustration, then desperation. All of it regarding finances. Not a single word regarding the surgery. Not a single question regarding Ethan and Emily. Dot. And then there was my father's last text. "You can't just cut us off like this. We already booked a cruise next month. The tickets are non-refundable." I gazed at it, my gut twisting in revulsion. To them, I was nothing more than an ATM. Jessica's texts, however, were not the same. Real puzzlement. "Mom and Dad told you they had some minor procedure. Why are they stressing over cash? What's up?" It struck me then my parents had lied to her. They'd minimized my emergency as an excuse for prioritizing a concert over their own grandkids. Even drowsy from pain medication, I knew what I had to do. I wrote out the truth, all of it. All of the betrayals. Her response came back almost immediately. "Oh my God. Natasha, I promise I didn't know it was an emergency surgery." Jessica's voice broke over the phone. "They said you were just being dramatic about a routine checkup. If I'd have known, I would have been there. I would have babysat the twins. I'm so sorry." I shut my eyes. I trusted her. Jessica wasn't cruel, just grown up in a home where needs were always met, and hers were at the forefront. Perhaps now, with the facade stripped away, she would finally look at our parents for the people they really were. Dot, by the time I was released, I'd made 3 choices. First, I formally employed Olivia on a part-time basis to assist with the twins while I recovered. She was not just a nanny, she was a lifeline. Second, I got in touch with a lawyer and wrote a will. A good friend would be appointed guardian of my children in the event of my death. Definitely not my parents. Third, I blocked my parents' numbers. No more poison, no more games. I gave Jessica limited access, tentatively testing her honesty. Asterisk. The cost of my decision was enormous. The $2,500 a month I'd been pouring into my parents' checking account was almost 1/3 of my salary as a graphic designer. Without that drain, I could finally afford to pay for decent childcare. Perhaps even recreate the emergency fund I'd depleted after James' passing. That evening, nestled in my own bed while the twins slept down the hall, feelings churned inside me like a tempest. Guilt for having the audacity to prioritize my children and myself. Fear for how I was going to recover while raising 2 toddlers. But underlying all, something shifted. Self-respect. My phone vibrated. A text message from Jessica. I just got into an enormous argument with Mom and Dad over how they treated you. I'm spending the night at a hotel. Can we discuss tomorrow? For the first time in years, I understood I wasn't alone entirely. 2 weeks later, I was stronger, but the incision still ached whenever I moved too rapidly. Olivia came each morning to take care of the twins while I worked at home. My clients had been patient and understanding, and working at home allowed me to be near Ethan and Emily. Jessica came over twice, bringing homemade food and sitting with the twins as we conversed. Initially, our discussions were tentative, but gradually her barriers broke. They always made it sound like you were intentionally creating distance. She confessed one night as we sat observing Ethan and Emily run around the living room. I never knew they were the ones driving you away. For the first time in a long time, I saw a different version of my sister, someone not blind, not selfish, but manipulated as I had been. I wasn't yet willing to trust her completely, but I couldn't deny the effort she was putting forth. And then there was the knock. The one I was half expecting. Through the peephole, my stomach fell. There they were. My parents. My mom held her designer bag as if it were armor, lips pressed thin. My dad stood next to her, arms crossed, his face etched with that old impatience that had shaped my childhood. I froze, heart pounding. At last, I released the chain and opened the door just wide enough to talk through the gap. What do you want? I demanded, trying to sound steadier than I was. Natasha, sweetie, we've been so concerned. My mother cooed, her voice laced with syrup. It was that kind of sweetness that always made my skin prickle. You haven't returned our calls. We just had to check on you and the twins to make sure you were okay. We're okay, I said without inflection. Now, if that's it, it's not all, my father interrupted, leaning his hand against the door as if he could simply push his way into the room. We have to talk about this absurd financial situation. The bank called regarding our mortgage, and we had to use our cruise money to pay for it. The arrogance took my breath. No mention of my recovery. No mention of Ethan and Emily. Only money. Always money. I told you I'm severing financial ties, I said, and I meant it. But sweetheart, my mother whined, her voice rising into a pitch of practiced desperation. We've come to rely on that money. Your father and I have adopted our lifestyle around your pledge to us. My commitment, I repeated, laughing bitterly. I've been paying out of guilt, out of duty. And while I was in a hospital bed, struggling for my life, you couldn't even keep an eye on your own grandchildren. My father's face set, his jaw clenched. That's not fair, Natasha. We had things planned. Plans, I said, seething with anger. More important than my children's safety? More important than whether I lived or died? My voice trembled, not because I was afraid, but because I was furious. The doctors told me I might not have made it through that surgery. Did either of you ever ask me how it went? Their silence was oppressive. We made one mistake, my mother spoke theatrically. Are you really going to punish us like this? This is not punishment, I said, a strange calm coming over me. This is consequence. I spent my entire life pleading for your approval, pleading for crumbs of love. And in my moment of greatest need, you opted for Elton John tickets over your daughter's life. We're your parents. My dad shouted, his tone switching to command. And I'm a parent too, I retorted, my tone as hard as glass. And I will never treat Ethan and Emily the way you've treated me. Emily then toddled into sight, her stuffed giraffe clutched tightly in her hand. My mother's face immediately softened, her voice thick with insincere sweetness. There's my precious grandbaby, she crooned, getting down on her haunches. Grandma brought presents. Emily held her giraffe close and automatically stepped back, her big eyes darting to me for reassurance. I think you should leave, I instructed. When I'm ready to talk, if ever, I'll get in touch. But the money, my father started. Is no longer your concern, I completed, and softly shut the door in their faces. The pounding on my door the next morning was back. This time they had brought reinforcements. Natasha, sweetie, let's all be reasonable. My mother's sister, the self-styled family mediator, spoke up. I didn't even open the door. Your parents are struggling without your assistance, she begged. They were managing their finances for 40 years before I began assisting, I answered through the wood. They elected early retirement, knowing their savings wouldn't suffice. That was their choice. My mom's voice intervened, a higher, more shrill tone. We made those choices because you promised to assist us. We've already canceled our cruise, and now we can lose the house. I pushed my forehead against the door, years weighing down on me. Their strategy was so obvious now. Manipulation in the guise of guilt. When had I ever vowed them lifelong support? I hadn't. I had promised them temporary assistance once they retired. In some way, over time, that had been distorted, molded into a permanent leash around my neck. Now, longer, Mom, Dad, I'm recovering from major surgery and caring for 2 toddlers. This conversation is over. I stepped away from the door, their words muted by wood as they knocked and begged, refusing to release their grip. But I did not return. Not this time. Later in the day, a message appeared in my inbox. My father had sent a mass email sent to the entire extended family. In it, he wove a tale in which he and my mother were the altruistic victims. He claimed I had abandoned them in their time of need, following all the sacrifices they'd made. For me, the detail he conveniently omitted. Their insistence that they not babysit my children. Well, I had emergency surgery the night I might have died. The performance was perfect. But what he hadn't anticipated was that the audience would refuse to applaud. My cousin Michael responded first, slicing through the farce like a hot knife. Uncle Robert, didn't you recently purchase a new boat? And Aunt Diana, wasn't that a new diamond tennis bracelet at Thanksgiving? The ball of yarn was lit. Other family members joined in. Many approached me privately, seeking the truth. Even Aunt Patty, our alleged family peacemaker, called me personally. I didn't know about your surgery, she confessed, her tone gentle with embarrassment. They said you were making a big deal out of some minor procedure and using it to financially punish them. Jessica, meanwhile, was no longer speechless. Having witnessed firsthand the callousness of our parents, she stood staunchly with me. With me, she composed my sole reply to the family email thread. I had recent emergency surgery with high risk of complications. My parents wouldn't take care of my children while I was recovering because they had concert tickets. I am now recovering and taking care of my twins without added stress. One sentence, brief, fact-based, irrefutable. The outpouring of support that followed amazed me. Cousin Michael's wife brought home-cooked dinners to my doorstep. A far-off cousin I hardly knew provided gratis babysitting. Jessica started staying weekends at my place, getting to know the real Ethan and Emily, not names on a holiday card. And Valerie, the nurse who had been with me in the darkest hour, introduced me to a young widowed parent support group. We First met on Zoom, and when faces populated my screen, I felt something I hadn't experienced since. James's passing, comprehending, belonging, hoped out my parents' meticulously constructed facade was crumbling meanwhile. Jessica uncovered it when assisting them with their finances. They've been lying, she stated, her voice thick with incredulity. They're not broke, they're overspent. They went out and got a second mortgage last year to get the boat. And the timeshare. They've been expecting you to finance their lifestyle forever. Their voicemails became more hysterical, the texts more desperate, but every one of them was weaker, emptier. For years, they had shackled me with guilt and responsibility. But now, their hold was wavering, because from the ruin of betrayal, I was constructing something anew, a true family. One chosen, not coerced. One based on concern, not domination. And for the first time in my existence, I could breathe. 1 month into my surgery. Life dealt an unexpected blow, not to me, but to them. Jessica called, her voice stuck somewhere. Between worry and annoyance, they're in total panic mode. The bank just handed them a foreclosure notice, 60 days to get current, or the house is history. I adjusted Emily on my hip as Ethan snored peacefully on the couch. What about their retirement savings? Pretty much gone, Jessica confessed with a sigh. They spent some of it on that boat and threw the rest into some scam Dad's golfing friend sold them on. Lost almost everything. I'm not saying you have to help them, Natasha. I just wanted you to know. That night, my phone flashed with desperate messages from both of them. The performance of concern had given way to pure begging. My mother's words sliced like a confession. We never thought you'd actually cut us off. We assumed you were just upset and would begin sending money again in a week or two. That one line set something off inside of me. All those years of sacrificing myself, of prioritizing their needs over my very survival, it had never been enough. Because in their minds, my boundaries had never existed, but now my life was changing. The support group became my lifeline. It was through them that I met Diana, widowed real estate agent with a little boy. She introduced me to new options, selling my small, cramped apartment, moving to someplace cheaper, someplace better for the twins. Meanwhile, I discovered meaning in an ancillary business creating memorial websites. What was initially done for James was now assisting others in paying tribute to theirs. The word caught on, the orders poured in, and for the first time since his passing, I felt something more than mere survival, purpose, momentum, growth. The irony couldn't have been more acute when my parents appeared in welcome at my doorstep. Once more, this time they brought a spreadsheet, not apologies. We require $144,000, my father announced, pushing the papers across my dining table. His typical authoritative voice trembled with urgency. If we can get ahead, we won't lose our house. I didn't blink. I just waved them down, not out of duty, out of interest. I wanted to hear what excuses they had at their disposal now that reality had come calling. What about selling the boat? I asked matter-of-factly. We'd lose money, my father grumbled. And the timeshare? We've attempted it, my mother rushed. The market's awful. Anyway, she stalled. Those are our retirement indulgences. A smile nearly slipped out. Luxuries, begging for survival. Luxuries you can't afford, I replied coldly. My father shifted forward, anger returning to his voice. We could have afforded them if you'd worked. It's the very least you can do after everything we've given you. I looked at him, steady, unwavering. What have you done for me? The question hung, sharp as a blade, and then, as if on cue, the twins toddled into the room, Ethan clinging to his toy truck, Emily chattering happily. My parents' faces relaxed immediately, masks slipping back into old form. Here they are, my mom oofed, stretching out a hand to Emily. Our little sweet peas. Emily halted, examined her grandmother's extended hands, and scurried behind my legs. They don't know you, I said, my tone steady, but tinged with finality. Doubt no one moved. No one spoke. I stood before them, seated in my tiny dining room, the twins holding onto my legs. You've been absent at the 3 times that mattered most, I said softly, when I needed you when James died, when I needed you during surgery, and now when your grandchildren need grandparents. You chose not to be involved. That's not fair, my father snapped. We're busy people, too busy for your sole grandchildren, too busy to sit with your daughter in emergency surgery, but not too busy to come begging for cash. My tone remained, even steady. I think that says something about your priorities. My mother's expression twisted, whether out of true remorse or guile, I couldn't anymore determine. Without your assistance, we'll lose everything, she breathed. I already lost everything, I said. My throat closed up, but my tone remained bitter. I lost my husband. My children lost their father, and we survived. You'll survive too. 3 months after, they couldn't run away from the inevitable. The lakefront house was lost. The boat sold for a gut-wrenching loss. The timeshare sold for a fraction of the original price. They settled into a plain condo, bereft of luxury, but still hanging on to blame. They're telling everyone you abandoned them, Jessica told me one afternoon. They make it sound like you broke some lifelong promise to support them. I smiled weakly. Let them speak. The truth can stand on its own, and it did. After the whole story was out, even family members who had always stood up for them jumped ship. My father's own sister phoned to say she was impressed by my courage after hearing about how they'd not come to my aid during my surgery, and my life was flourishing. Diana assisted me in locating a small 3-bedroom home in a family-oriented neighborhood. The mortgage was less than my previous rent, and Ethan and Emily finally had a yard of their own. My memorial site business continued to grow, allowing me to move on from the empty freelance work I had previously relied upon, and I discovered something I had thought was lost to me forever: community. The neighbors received us with casseroles. The support group became playdates. Jessica became a sister in reality, not rivalry. Even Valerie from the hospital visited with her children on occasion. I had lost my husband. I had severed connections with my parents, and yet I had never felt more not alone. 6 months following my surgery, a letter came, handwritten, from my mother. I nearly tossed it in the trash. But curiosity got the better of me. There was something I never would have anticipated inside, an apology. The genuine kind. I've had time to consider my actions. Seeing you construct a life without our intervention made me face painful realities. I resented your self-sufficiency, your fortitude. I was resentful that you did not appear to require me as I had required my own mother. You did require me, however simply, not in the manner in which I wished to be required. When you requested, used to care for the twins while you were being operated on, you were extending a need, and we let you down utterly. I am truly sorry. She told me how they'd reorganized their lives. My father part-time at a hardware store. Extravagances sold. Living simple for the first time in decades. No ask for money. Not even apology. Just recognition. When I produced the letter with Jessica, she scowled. They've been discussing writing you for weeks. Dad opposed it, but since his heart scare, I think even he's beginning to understand things differently. For the first time in years, I sat with a letter in my lap and experienced something I hadn't connected with my parents in a very long time. Hope. When Jessica said my father's heart scare, concern flashed in me in spite of myself. Just high blood pressure and chest aches, she said. But it rattled him. He's on medication now, actually listening to the doctor for once, confronting mortality, It's humbled him. I didn't respond. I wasn't prepared. The letter remained on my nightstand like a burden I was powerless to remove. True regret or another ploy? That nagged at me. That evening, I took out long-forgotten family photographs for the first time since severing ties. Smiling faces, birthday cakes, lake, vacations. But behind each picture now I saw the truth stagings. My parents were always actors, playing perfect family while their own agendas came first. It had been a year since my operation, and I had agreed to see them. Neutral ground, a small cafe, not too close to my new home. When they entered, I did not quite recognize them. My larger-than-life father looked smaller. His bold stance had yielded to something more humble, frail. My mother's fashionable attire had given way to comfortable utility clothes. We sat there as silent as stone until my father did something I never expected to see. He wept. "I've been a rotten dad," he exclaimed, voice cracking. "And a terrible granddad. I don't think I deserve forgiveness. But I need you to understand, I realize now, how selfish we were." My mother leaned forward, not brushing against me, but stretching out like she wanted to. "We've been in family counseling," she said quietly. "Jessica bullied us into it. We resisted at first, but it stripped us bare. I didn't hurry to comfort them. I didn't apologize. Instead, I displayed photographs of Ethan and Emily to them. I explained about our new existence, the home, the yard, the smiles that they'd been missing out on. And for the first time in my life, they listened. No interruptions. No making it about themselves. Simply listening. As we were standing to leave, my dad quietly, nearly brokenly asked, "Would it be possible, someday, to know our grandchildren?" I looked him in the eye. "That's up to your actions, not promises. If you're serious about change, we can try short, supervised visits. But let me be clear, my children will only have relationships with individuals who treat their mother with respect." Walking away from that session, I didn't feel a crushing burden. No burning rage, just peace. I was no longer the daughter pleading for validation. I was the mother who drew lines, who stood firm on them without apology, who knew her value. Whether my parents were capable of really changing or not was still to be seen. But one thing was rock solid: I had changed. For good.